Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. As music theorists, we tend to focus on things like harmony and melody, and with good reason. They're deeply structured and they have a huge impact on how we perceive a piece of music, but if you're listening to a song, there's one thing that probably stands out even more. The instrumentation. An acoustic guitar sounds very different from a symphony orchestra even if they're playing the exact same chords. It'd be impossible to classify every conceivable arrangement of instruments, so to make things a little more manageable, we break them up into what we call textures. These aren't a list of instruments exactly, but they do help us understand how the different parts in a song are coming together to create a larger whole. The first and simplest texture is monophony, meaning one sound. This is where we have a melody and that's it, like with an a cappella singer or a solo flute. Monophony is often used to convey a sense of vulnerability or closeness. There's much less music in between the performer and their audience, so they can speak directly to you without a bunch of trumpets getting in the way. In some cases, monophonic textures can actually have two or more voices, but if they do, those voices have to be exactly doubling the main melody. If they're not, then you have a different thing, and what that thing is depends on what exactly the second line is doing. If it's playing a slightly different version of the melody, then you've stumbled into heterophony, meaning different sounds. Here, everyone is still playing the main melody, but each player gets to take their own liberties with it, embellishing and ornamenting as they choose. This is rare in Western music, but it's fairly common in other musical cultures around the world, including China, Indonesia, and the Middle East, as well as in certain kinds of jazz. It allows you to retain the emphasis on the melody while providing individual players the chance to experiment and express themselves. If the second line's just playing the same note over and over again, then you've got biphony, meaning two sounds. This creates what's called a drone, where a single note is repeated over and over regardless of the surrounding music. It sort of fades into the background, becoming an almost rhythmic element that doesn't really interact with the melody, even though it seems like it should. This is even rarer in Western music, but can be found in certain cultures that frequently utilize drones, like Indian classical music. If the second voice is instead playing a simple supporting line, then you have either monody or homophony. In both these textures, you have one lead melody and then a supporting accompaniment. The exact line between the two is a little unclear, but the main difference is this. In monody, the emphasis is on the melody as a soloist, whereas in homophony, it's on the way it blends with the accompaniment. Of course, in practice, neither part receives all the focus, so determining which one is the technically correct term for a given section is perhaps more of an academic exercise than anything, but they are different, at least in theory. They're also by far the most common texture in modern popular music. Anytime you hear a lead vocalist singing over a backing band, or a guitarist taking a solo while the rest of the band plays chords, it's probably homophony. The arrangements can get very complex, but they're almost always in service to the primary melody. An interesting subcategory of this is what's called homorhythmic music, where all the accompanying parts play in the exact same rhythm as the melody. You'll hear this sort of thing in choirs, barbershop quartets, and the like, and it serves to really emphasize the primary melodic line. Homophonic music tends to be more cluttered than monophonic stuff for obvious reasons, and making all the voices move together helps dial that back a bit so the structure of the melody can shine through. I like to think of it as a compromise between the two textures, and it kinda gets the best of both worlds. So we've got one melody by itself, one melody embellishing in different ways, one melody with a drone, and one melody with accompaniment, so what are we missing? Well, how about two melodies? This is called polyphony, meaning many sounds, and it can get pretty ridiculous. In polyphonic music, you have multiple independent lines that are interacting but not directly related. Neither line really gets to be the melody, each one gets its own chance to shine, and they're often playing at the same time, further confusing things. It's easy for polyphonic music to become overwhelmingly chaotic, so usually it's best to try and balance the complexity levels between the different melodies. When one is getting busy, the others should try and back off and give them space. They'll still be doing something, but it might be a good time to play some longer held notes and less intense rhythms. Of course, in practice, it's hard to avoid giving one line a little more prominence than the others, so it winds up being perceived as the main melody, with the others taking on the role of counter melody. This is normal and has given rise to the term counterpoint to describe polyphonic writing. Counterpoint also refers to various sets of rules used at different times that told you how you could or couldn't write your polyphonic pieces, and those rules are still an important part of music theory today, even if we rarely follow them anymore. So those are the different kinds of textures, but there's also a lot of variation composition within them. If you took an 80-piece symphony orchestra and had them all play the exact same melody together, it'd technically be monophony, but it'd sound really different from most monophonic music. As such, we tend to talk about texture sizes too. How many instruments are playing and what ranges are they playing in? If you have a small high texture, and you add in a low bass line, it sounds really different even if it stays homophonic or whatever. Good arrangers will often vary their textures a lot throughout a song, and understanding how each different texture affects the emotional feel of the piece is crucial, even if it's also really subjective. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to help make these videos possible, please consider supporting 12 Tone on Patreon or checking out our store. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and keep on rockin'.